North, a DAV of Minnesota podcast where we honor and serve veterans and their families. I'm your host, Trent Dilks, and together we'll explore the stories, programs, and initiatives that make a difference for our veterans. Thanks for joining us as we dive into the heart of what it means to serve and be served. This is Veterans of the North. Let's get started. Again, I'm Trent Dilks. I'm your host for today's episode, and I'm joined by Andy Treno, a veterans home loan expert, and Brad Williams, a real estate expert and real estate agent. Welcome, you two.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, let's dive right in. VA home loan guarantee. What is it? Why should veterans be looking at using it? Andy, if you want to get us started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you calling me an expert. I was hesitant to use that word. I'm just passionate about helping people. But to answer your question, the VA loan, it's a benefit that our veterans earn for serving in the military. It's an entitlement to get a home, and it's got a lot of great features to that VA home loan. Some of the biggest ones that people hear about, no money down, so it's no down payment required if you have that entitlement. And then the other big thing is the interest rates are cheaper. So it's a way for veterans to get into a home with a cheaper rate, no money down. And then overall, the underwriting guidelines for it are a little bit more flexible than they are for our conventional and our FHA products. So it's a way, someone who may not qualify for another home loan could get in with, different debt to income requirements. So it allows more of our veterans to get into homes and to have that, that big part of the American dream of being a homeowner.
Excellent. Well, VA home loan is a bit of a misnomer, though, right? It almost implies that there's a loan from the VA, and that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the VA making these sorts of decisions on whether you're approved or not. So it's not a loan from the VA when we say VA home loan, correct?
Exactly, and that's a really important distinction. The VA doesn't make loans. What the VA does is they guarantee the loan. So from a lender's perspective, they've got a guarantee from the VA that, hey, if this thing defaults, we're going to help you with those losses. So that's why the interest rates are cheaper. From the lender's perspective, they've got this guarantee in there from the VA. But they don't make the loans. They have a very detailed handbook that goes over the guidelines for those loans in order to get that guarantee from the VA. And then other lenders are the ones who are actually making those loans. And we hear that all the time. Oh, the VA declined my loan. Well, the VA never made a loan decision in their life. They're buying loans after the fact and guaranteeing the loans after the fact. They're not actually making those loans.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard it the other way. The VA denied my loan, or, there's some misunderstanding. How about eligibility? So before we get into the next steps, I'm a veteran. I'm not sure if I'm eligible, or there's different circumstances. What could either you tell me a little bit about eligibility?
Yeah, I can get into that piece. I'm actually the proxy for Brad Williams today.
You look just like him.
Weird. One of the other things I wanted to mention about the benefit of the VA loan that wasn't touched on is there's no private mortgage insurance or no mortgage insurance. So with other loan programs, if you put less than 20% down, you're going to be paying private mortgage insurance each month on the mortgage. With a VA loan, whether you put zero down or you decide to put money down, you're not going to pay that. So I wanted to just throw that piece in there. And as far as eligibility, I want to make sure, like when we were coming in planning for this podcast, I said we're not going to be so specific that we say something that somebody thinks, well, this dude on this podcast said I'm not eligible.
Yeah, you didn't cover it, so I'm not going to look into it.
The basics of it are, if you served active duty and you served, well, I don't even want to say honorably, because you could have been discharged under like general, honorable under general conditions, or, bad conduct discharge might pretty much say that you're not eligible. But the point is, National Guardsmen can qualify it for, reserve component can qualify for it, active duty can qualify for it. So what tells you whether you're qualified or not is what's called your certificate of eligibility, which we'll talk about the best ways to get that later on. But surviving spouses can qualify for it. In some cases, merchant Marines can qualify for the VA home loan. There's actually a VA home loan for Native Americans as well. So, it is very broad on who might qualify for it.
I'm terribly unfamiliar with the Merchant Marines, but I immediately imagine one of those pea coats is that still the thing with the wool hat? Is that Merchant Marine?
Where's the real Trent Dilks at?
Is that-
I don't know. I'm going to go get the real Brad Williams.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Yeah. So
if
the
you
point with
serve-
eligibility, if somebody tells you you're not eligible, unless you fully trust them, I mean, go to somebody else. And we'll talk about who you can go to verify. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I probably have 3 or 4 people that come to me a month that tell me that they weren't eligible for the VA loan, and we dig into it a little bit more, and it turns out that they were.
Yeah. So
So,
if you serve,
it's not
you
a
should be
simple
looking
answer.
at this. It's
Absolutely.
You know, we've talked about it. It's probably the best benefit or one of the best benefits out there for veterans.
I think financially, you could. I say confidently, it's financially the best benefit that a veteran has.
You know, and I'm tending to agree with you. It's a great benefit. So, all right. Now I'm interested in the VA home loan. I got to find somebody who can navigate this for me, the professional who's going to be my mortgage person, get my pre-approval so I can start to really look at houses and things like that. What am I looking for? I Google it. Is it whatever ad pops up on my Facebooks or what am I looking for? How am I finding the right professional?
Yeah, I think Andy, you should talk about vetted VA here.
Yeah, and you know, I'm gonna say too. You talk about like you Google it and an ad pops up. Just because a company's really good at marketing for VA loans, and there's some of them out there who are incredible marketers, but they're not the best lenders to go to. You know, some of the bigger companies aren't the best. Some bigger companies do a good job. You know, we talked about it as we were in the room before. Not every lender is the same. Generally speaking, the VA loan is going to be about 0.5% cheaper in rate than a conventional loan. Now, some lenders take that as an opportunity to charge the same rate that they charge on conventional and just make more money off the backs of the veteran. We see it all the time. There's also some big lenders that do a lot of great advertising that I have cleaned up their mess if they declined someone that actually qualified. So really important to find someone who understands the loan, a company that's ethical, that isn't overcharging because they think that they can and get away with it. Brad, you mentioned Vetted VA. Vetted VA is an organization that's out there, and I'm a part of it as well. What we've done is we've gotten professionals from across the country into a Facebook group to help educate veterans without soliciting. So if you go to the Facebook group, vettedva.com, or Facebook group Vetted VA, you can go in there and ask questions, and no one's going to DM you. No one's going to solicit you for your mortgage. You're free to ask questions in there. And then what we've done is we have those professionals that help in that group. We've put them on a map. Those professionals have gone through extensive testing and education through Vetted VA to make sure that they understand the product. And we've also vetted the fact that they have competitive rates. They're not taking advantage of veterans. So for me personally, if I get a referral from a state that I'm not working in, the first place that I go to is that map on vettedva.com because I'm confident that those people know the product. They're going to give a competitive rate and good advice. And I know those people are going to be well taken care of.
All right. So we're looking beyond just maybe some of the targeted ads. And, every time I see those, I get a lot for Windows from one company in particular. I get this thing about Windows all the time. It comes in my mail. It gets left on my doorstep. Same company over and over. And every house in my area gets them. And I think, that money has to come from somewhere. It's not cheap to send me a mailer every single week about Windows and all of my neighbors.
Right.
So, sometimes the over advertising, I almost look away from it and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
You targeted me too much. I'm gonna move along here. So,
and then on that same note or a similar note, to what Andy was talking about, I mean, there are a lot of exceptional loan officers and realtors that aren't part of Vetted VA that are dedicated to working with veterans, but we're going to cover some of the myths and facts of the VA loan. And if one of the people, the professionals you're working with, tells you something different than what we've said here today, then maybe reach out to one of us or reach out to the Vetted VA to make sure. What we don't want to happen is someone to be told, yeah, you have to sell that home in order to buy another one with the VA loan, and then they just believe that. That's that barracks lawyer shit that we were talking about. That was one.
That was
one
one
swear word.
That was one. We're going to try to limit our swear words here. So shit was our first one.
Yeah,
You got
there's
yours?
a second one right there.
Damn it. That's our second one.
No, you blew it.
Yeah.
You blew it.
And then, my approach is like I'm a real estate agent, and my wife is a mortgage broker that specializes in VA. So, I mean, you could always just sleep with your loan officer.
And that's why I'm
no.
never going to be your favorite loan officer. I'm just angling for the top 2.
Yep.
Anyway.
Caught some people off guard with that one. Maybe edit that out.
No, we're keeping that one in.
Can I share my story? You know, you talked about
Different topic,
Not
right?
about how he became your favorite loan officer.
Top two.
Top two. Yeah.
Want to make sure here.
That's just third base. All right. Yeah. Anyway.
So, you know, the story we talked about beforehand, and Brad just mentioned, you know, someone telling you have to pay off a VA loan. So I have a customer I'm working with now. They came to me last week, and they were trying to refinance out of a 2.5% mortgage into a 7.5% because they thought they couldn't have two VA loans at the same time. And a loan officer told them that and was trying to do that loan for them. So this veteran was trying to get out of a great loan that, folks, I don't think we're ever going to see 2.5% ever again. You know, that's just not going to happen. That's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And they were being told they had to get out of that to buy their new primary residence. And that's the type of misinformation that we're seeing out there that would have cost this veteran thousands of dollars over the life of that loan. So it's important to find someone who understands the program.
Yeah, and on the eligibility, here's a little story for you. And I didn't even talk about this one in our pre-taping, little work group that we did. But I had a Marine veteran. I wasn't technically working with him, but other people that I know were working with this guy, Marine veteran. He was going to be buying this home that he'd been renting for several years. He served in the Marine Reserves, and he had served honorably. He had honorable discharge, 6 years, no deployments. And he was told elsewhere that he wasn't eligible because he didn't have active duty time. Well, I knew that if everything that he told me was correct, then he would be eligible. I tracked down through proper channels, and you guys probably saw my Facebook post about anybody know where I can get these documents for a Marine reservist, DD 256, I think it's called. And it's like, man, for 2 months, I was talking to Marine Corps Human Resources Command, and I finally found a Marine Corps major that was willing to look at these documents for me. And I'm showing him his retirement point statement. I'm showing him the memorandum that moved the Marine from the reserves to the inactive reserves, because this DD 256 was never produced a couple years ago. It is the equivalent to the National Guard's NGB 22, right?
Yep.
Or active duty's DD 214. And so this Marine, this major was like, yep, he's owed this. We got him to sign this legitimate. The guy is officially discharged from the Marine Corps, qualified for the VA loan, then closed on it 2.5 weeks later. Yep. So, don't take there's an easy answer sometimes with these things, but it doesn't mean it's the right answer. So,
on the flip side, we talked about where to look and how to look. What am I looking out for? What is a warning sign that maybe I need to keep looking or I need to seek other advice? You've both been in the industry a long time. What are some of the flags? What are some of the issues that say, this is probably someone we need to look somewhere else? What is there some commonalities there? Is there something that you see?
From a realtor perspective, you can ask your real estate agent how comfortable they are with the VA loan, and I think that many of them will say, "Yeah, I'm very comfortable," because there's going to be an assumption that they're all the same. But ask them, how many veterans have you worked with this year, or how many veterans does your company work with? Because maybe the realtor doesn't have much experience, but if their managing broker might be a 20-year active Army retiree, that might be a VA loan expert. So you can ask them, and not being an expert on it isn't necessarily a red flag. You just want somebody that's going to be open to taking input from other people. So I will have other realtors contact me. Hey, I'm working with this guy, this girl that they're a veteran. They said that you'd be happy to help me if I run into any roadblocks. I want that all day long, So, hey, if you're not an expert, are you willing to talk to somebody if we get in a jam with a VA loan?
Yeah, and I think that's really the important thing there is if you get the sense that someone's trying to talk you out of it before they understand your situation, that'd be the biggest red flag for me, because there's a lot of people who are either ignorant or scared or just not good with it that are going to tell you, VA's not always the right choice and maybe we should look at conventional. That's a huge red flag to me. They're prepping you to take you away from your benefit that's, like we said, one of your best financial resources as a veteran. You mentioned just because the person may not have done a ton. My office in my company is an open door. I help people all the time. I help other professionals with vetted VA as well. So someone someone's got to do their first VA loan.
Right.
We
Yeah.
didn't all start
Yeah.
out experts. If that person is educated and or willing to be educated, that's important. If they start out trying to talk you out of it, that'd be the biggest red flag for me.
Yeah, if somebody's coming in and they got that attitude that, I'm just getting into these, but they're willing to learn and they're upfront about that. Sometimes that's better than the person who has done 100 of them one way, and anytime
Right.
they haven't gone that way, they've just pushed them off or gotten rid of them. I'm thinking, all right, so among both of our listeners, we might have one of the two listeners might be looking at buying their first home.
I was going to crack a joke about my mom listening to this.
Hey, my mom and my wife will listen. Okay,
That's
Perfect.
You know what?
Yeah,
You
4
know,
or 5
my,
already.
my mom will too, but she's not a veteran. Whitney's not a veteran. Is your mom a veteran?
No, but
then let's
she
just
knows.
disband this podcast now.
But
you
you know
can
what?
tune out.
That's-
Everybody, go find Joe Rogan's podcast.
That's 5 listens right
But
there.
people like my wife. Like they
True,
might-
true. Maybe if she shares it, we'll get some some listens. Perfect.
Our next podcast will be the spouses of VA home loan experts.
Yes.
Here we got some people with personality.
Yeah, like the wives of Orange County or whatever that's
Yup.
called. Yeah, we'll just.
The wives of veterans issues. That's
Oh, that'd be a whole different podcast. That might get some traction.
You
Yeah.
might have to up the swearing though.
Right? The swearing limit has to go up.
so veteran though, first time home buyer. We already talked about how this is a guarantee, a VA home loan guarantee, essentially.
Yeah.
What do they need to know? What I'm looking at buying. I want to buy as soon as I can. What do they need to know? Just the general process of getting approved, the pitfalls, the things they should be doing a year before they're going to go to get a mortgage, or maybe they've had shitty credit. They've done stupid things. That Charger at 28% interest they got while they're on active
Yep.
duty, and the bank came back and got it. What do they
Like
need to be?
defined veteran, owned a Ford Mustang or a Charger at 25+%
Yeah,
interest rate.
Yeah, and
You know?
So what do they need to be looking at? How can they set themselves up for smoother approval, better rates? A process, whether it's way ahead or it's right around the corner. Oh crap! I need to buy a house.
The best thing for me as a professional is if you reach out sooner than later. Because I can look at your credit. We can even do a soft pull that won't impact your credit to see where things sit. And a lot of times it might take some time, but a lot of times we can help people get that score up. Now, even though I'm talking about getting your score up, another very important thing to know, there is no minimum credit score for a VA loan. And that's another reason that people, they say, I got that Charger. I made 3 payments. That was pretty good, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't find the car for 6 months. Like, it was great. We had a blast. So you have something, a ding in your credit doesn't mean you don't qualify. For me, I'm a mortgage broker, which means I work with over 100 different lenders. And some of those lenders have minimum credit requirements and say, we only want, a 620 or whatever that is. I have lenders that say, we don't care what the score is. We might have other limitations. We may say that we have a debt to income limitation, but bottom line, that score isn't the only factor. So reaching out, even if you think you don't qualify, I can tell you, all right, today you're that, 500 credit score to 300. I didn't even know we could go that low, but here you are. Here's what I can do for you today. But if you have a year's worth of time, here's our roadmap to get you up so that we can get you better qualified when it is time. So really reaching out as soon as possible is really important.
Yeah, the basics. I mean, you're going to be paying your bills on time, those kind of things. But even if I've found a lot of people with excellent credit aren't constantly monitoring their credit. They've just paid their bills on time. They're very structured. And I've had people reach out to start the process with me, and when we find out, we get them connect with a lender. They do they pull their credit in one way or another, soft pull, hard pull, and then they find out there's a collections account on there that's not even theirs, but it's on there.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we did this early enough. We have time to get this cleaned up. We can do the statements to the credit bureaus and get this stuff cleaned up. So pay your bills on time if you can save up a little money. Because here's the one thing to know, or an important thing to know. Just because the VA loan is of 0 down payment requirement, it doesn't mean there aren't costs associated with it. Because there are going to be, your traditional closing costs.
Yep.
So having some money saved aside is going to be helpful. Now, I have plenty of veterans that come to me and they start and they say, hey, Brad, I just don't have any money. Like, we're going to have to structure this in a way. Maybe we're getting credit from the seller, which we can do, and we do all the time. But if you're just trying to prepare yourself, stack up a little bit of money, make sure you're paying your bills on time, and get connected with a mortgage professional that you trust with your VA loan. and have them take a look at your credit to make sure there's no surprises there.
I remember as a young troop, I learned what credit was and that you could pull your credit reports from the bureaus.
Yeah.
And I must have been 24 when I learned what credit was, and which meant I hadn't done any damage to it either. I was just, I was.
So what year was your Charger when you got?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you know what? I got to go get this Charger. But anyway, I pulled my credit bureau, and do you guys remember the 5 CDs for a penny mailer of the 90s?
Columbia House?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. I had gotten
I should probably pay that collections account off.
Yeah, I had gotten Marcy Playground, the Sex and Candy.
Sex and Candy.
Yep.
1997?
Yeah, I listened to that on a loop. I was 12 years old. They sent it out to Turnti Diltez. And Turnti Diltez, was 12 years old. And he sent it back, and he got a few of I just remember Marcy Playground. And I didn't think of it. I didn't know it could follow you.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, I pull my first credit reports in my early 20s, and Trent Dilks, a.k.a. Turnti Diltez, they had been selling the debt so that it never went to the 7 years. So all of a sudden, I owed like $500 for Marcy Playground Sex and Candy CD.
And you learned the true cost of Sex and Candy.
Yeah, right. I did.
That's more than Marcy's Playground has made in the last 20 years.
I know it. And so I had no idea. And I was like, well, Turnti Diltez was 12. Are you sure I have to pay this?
Yeah.
But,
We know, Trent. It wasn't actually a CD. It was a Playboy subscription.
and there was an X-ray. I had been real sick as like an 18-year-old college freshman before I had been activated and gone overseas. And insurance had paid everything. I was 18, still under parents' insurance. I had no idea one X-ray had not been covered. So it wasn't that I was really doing the wrong things. It was just that, I ripped off BMG Music as a 12-year-old, and the doctor's office misclassified one X-ray, and so they were dinging my credit every.
Always best just to start. Get it checked and make sure you're good to go.
And deal with the facts. I mean, we can all guess what our score is, and that's another thing I see often. Like, well, Credit Karma said this, or my credit card statement came and they said I'm an 800. Like, well, that's not the real score that we use for mortgages. And sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower. It's always different, though.
But also don't think that, like, let's say you've got good credit, and you can categorize that differently, but I have some people that, like, I just need to get my credit to an 800 before I buy. It's like, if you want to do that, it's really not going to benefit you, like, at all.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a 730, for example, credit score, and you think, like, well, I'm going to buy when I get to 800, it's like, that's fine. But I know you can speak to that a little bit more, but it's not necessary.
Not at all.
It's not necessary.
You'd have the exact same rate.
Depending on the lender, there are certain, like, points you want to get to. Maybe it's like, don't take this as, like, fact, but there are some lenders where you can get a better interest rate if you're like a 620 or a 640 as opposed to below that. But when you're in that 700 range, north, like the higher 700s, like, you're doing excellent.
And you also have to remember that cost of waiting too. So people will sit here, and again, if you reach out, I can tell you, hey, here's where you sit today. If your credit goes up, here's what that payment would be today. But if between now and when you get that credit up, if rates all across the board go up by 0.25%, if someone 2 years ago didn't buy a house because they wanted an 800 and now they're buying, I think I said it, we're never going to see 2.5 again.
It's kind of time value of money stuff.
And we're coming to the end of the first segment, but I think one of the important parts on this is you can't bury your head in the sand.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who have made stupid, and some of them are young troops, have made stupid mistakes. And done some things like the Charger, like using their Visa credit card at the questionable clubs around some of the bases to get that cash advance. And they just as soon not consider, and address the problem head on. So it's not an option. I'm going to continue to rent an apartment at $1,800 a month for, And so it sounds like reach out. You want to work with them, right? You want to get them to a point where they can use your product, where they can buy the home. And so there are people out there who are allies who aren't going to sit there and scold you for being dumb when you were,
And we have encountered the people that have made either poor decisions or they're faced with a poor financial outlook, credit wise. And I mean, sometimes this is only like they think it's going to be years, and we get them in a home within 6 months.
Yeah.
So don't think that this is like a 5-year plan. I haven't seen it. I haven't even seen like a 2-year plan. I haven't even seen a 1-year plan. So it's usually much more fixable than that.
Once you start to address the problem.
Right.
Yeah, and just know the information. I look at my role as an educator. That's my job, is to educate and to say, here's what you can do today. Here's what it could be down the road. Ultimately, it's your decision, but reach out, be educated, and ultimately it's their decision. I mean, if you're looking at it that, hey, it's going to be $8 a month cheaper if I get my credit up, but it's still $200 a month less than what I'm paying in rent. I don't need my calculator for that one. Go get the house. Talk to Brad and get in the house.
Yeah, and then then you get to go buy the curtains, and that's the fun part.
And then you can buy the charger again.
As a 20-year-old, I had no idea how much curtains cost, or the fact that every window actually needed them.
Nah, you just tack up some sheets.
So how many neighbors complained about
you
strolling through?
Yeah, the curtains aren't for you. It's for your neighbors.
3 neighbors gave me a robe the first Christmas I moved in. So
Perfect.
That was excellent. All right. Well, I want to thank Andy Treno for joining us. Andy Treno, a VA mortgage expert, and here to help. And one more time, if you'd like to give a little plug on where they should look or what some parting words.
Sure, yeah. Just appreciate you guys having us on here. Really appreciate the opportunity. If you want to reach out to me, I've branded myself. I'm a hockey guy, so loangoalie.com. I make great saves on home loans. If you want to reach out to me there. If you're looking nationally, Vetted VA is just a great resource to get educated as well. And again, thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. Brad Williams is going to be joining me in segments 2 and 3 as we look at the home buying. Thanks for joining us as we dive into the heart of what it means to serve and be served. This is Veterans of the North.